Properties. Microphone. Testing 1 2 3. Hello, hello, hello. There we go. Okay, so I got the audio working. Okay, that is just the craziest thing. My OBS is updated, and it threw everything through a loop where the music wasn't working, and then also the sound isn't working. So if there's any problems, let me know inside of the chat, and I will see if I can fix that. Well, great. We're gonna go ahead and jump right on in today, since we only have about 2 hours to do these streams. We are going to be using this shot here. We'll be adding in a muzzle flash to this wonderful shot provided by Action VFX. You can grab all of these materials that we are using today from the Action VFX website. So this particular shot is from here, and if you guys go to this video, scroll down, you'll see that practice footage library right here. You could go ahead and select that file. This is free. Go ahead and just download this, and you guys can use it for your own uses. But today we are going to be creating some muzzle flashes. Alright, we'll turn down the music. It's actually capturing the music differently than I normally do. So OBS updated, and instead of it having, I think, application capture, where you could capture audio based off the application, that is no longer a feature in OBS, so I'm using desktop sound. So I imagine there's going to be several issues, but let's go on in here. This shot right here, I decided to grab the one. They had two different shots. They had this one, and then they had this other one right there, where the actual there was like smoke coming out of it and stuff like that, which is cool if you've got a gun that can do that. But I will say that the majority of the films that I've worked on, they were either not doing anything, or they certainly did not have smoke or any kind of flare coming out of the gun, so or muzzle flash coming out of the gun. So we are going to be compositing that stuff ourselves. But yeah, so this footage here is free. So you guys could use it, fully commercial license in accordance with the Action VFX license agreement, used for learning, teaching, your demo reel, and more. So go grab that right now. And as I said, that is in the link in the description right here. Also, a quick reminder before we jump into today's video, we do actually have a Patreon. So if you guys want to join the Patreon and see what's up and what we're working on, then that would be awesome, and then help support the channel. But also you get early uploads, like up to a week or so, of all of our tutorials and videos that we are working on. So if you want to see all that stuff early, you're going to see this video in a tutorial coming this Saturday, and I think we have an upload tomorrow with the CG render from last week. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into this video. We've got quite a bit of stuff to do. So the first step with looking at this shot and figuring out what exactly we're going to need to do to it is figuring out how many muzzle flashes we're going to need. And also what the requirements of this shot are. I'm thinking let's start with some muzzle flashes, see where we're at with time. I'm thinking that's going to be pretty easy to do. And then maybe we can add in some bullet hits into the ground or something like that. And with that being said, I'm keeping this pretty flexible with how we want the turnout of this shot to be. The thing is that sometimes you'll be working on shots and creatively they'll not know what they want on it, but they know they want something done on it. So we're going to start off with just a solid 2D or 3D camera track, and then that's going to give us the ability to do all the work that we need. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw in a camera tracker. I'm using Nuke 15. Oh, I should save also. I'm using Nuke 15, but I still use the classic camera tracker because I like it better. I haven't seen enough reason to swap over to the new 3D system inside of Nuke. Maybe someone can convince me, but that's just where I'm at here. I'm going to throw a camera tracker in, and there's a few things that we could do also. I'm going to just also drop in a roto node. We don't want the camera trackers to get confused on our guy over here, so it's just going to make our life a lot easier if we just roto the area in which he is at, which looks like I'm going to need to rotate that curve around. Or wait a second, what am I doing here? Why are we... It's fine, I'll delete you. You don't have to exist. It's so funny, it's acting like there's another point here. Oh, there is another point there, that's why. Okay, so yes, we will go ahead and roto this guy out. So I'm just going to add in several different keyframes. I like to just jump, you know, every 5 keyframes or so. Or every 5 frames and then add in a new keyframe. Should be pretty easy. It doesn't move throughout the shot terribly much. And we're just going to roto him out. I think that's good there. Then as I said, I mean, sometimes you're going to get shots like this that will not have any smoke, or the gun won't kick back, things like that, and you're going to need to add in different effects. But if you guys want to, it'd be really cool to see what you guys create as well. So if you join the Discord, post your finished video files inside the showcase once you're done. And I'd love to see some of the work that you guys create based off of either this tutorial or previous works that you've done already. Okay, so let's go look at this camera tracker. I'm going to plug this mask into that, and then that way we can say, let's see, camera tracker under mask. I'm going to set this to the mask alpha, and it's going to basically be ignoring the alpha of the shot, which we just defined with our roto right here. Now in our settings, I'm going to up this to like 300 features that it's looking for to track. This usually gives us a really nice, accurate camera track that we can work with. I'm not going to mess with any of the other settings. The only other thing that we might want to do is for lens distortion, say unknown lens. And then focal length unknown constant is totally fine. And now we're just going to go ahead and track that. It's going to go through our entire shot, ignoring that roto, and track it, which this is a really easy shot, so it'll get done pretty quickly here. I'm going to hit the solve button. And yes, our error is 0.89. That's honestly totally fine for what we need to do. But I might go through here and then just say delete rejected. And that's going to, you can see the number pop down a little bit more. And then you're going to say delete unsolved. And yes. And it's going to get rid of all the stuff that's not solving. And then again, now if we go over here, we could say update solve. And this will update it according to the points that we already have in here. And we should be good to go. 0.85 is a good number here, guys. So nothing to be sad about. Alright, so now that that's done, we could add in all sorts of effects to our scene wherever we want. And with the smoke that we're going to want from the muzzle flash, we can actually put it in 3D space where the gun is, and that way it kind of sits in the scene as the camera's moving. It would show a lot more with the camera if it was moving quite a bit, but for our specific purposes, it's not moving too much, but it'll still be there. So when the gun first kicks back here, like so, this is going to be the frame in which we're going to want our muzzle flash to happen on. So we're only doing one muzzle flash on this specific shot. So I'm going to, yeah, he like shakes his hand beforehand, but it's not till here that the gun is actually shooting. So frame 17 for us. I'm gonna set that to input as well. For frame 17, here's what we're gonna do. We can import some muzzle flash material, and as I mentioned, the link is in the description for all of these assets. But if you scroll down on here, you're gonna notice that it has several different things that we can use inside of our scene. So the first thing we're probably gonna look at is our muzzle flashes here. So I'm just gonna go click on that and see what kind of muzzle flashes are being recommended to us. If I'm being honest, I don't know much about guns, so what is a Colt 40? I believe a Colt 45 is very close to the the type of gun that we're using here. So I'm gonna probably grab this angled one. That looks pretty close to what we're trying to do. It's definitely not an AR here. I love this longer one right here. Let's do this side profile here. So I'm going to go ahead and download this side profile. Oops. I always forget that hitting that download button just doesn't instantly start the download window process, that I have to click a button after it. Whoops. Let's go to projects. Do I not have a shortcut link? I do not. I have streams. Streams. Today's date. I'm going to create a new folder called VFX Material. And we'll go ahead and drop it in there. Now, one thing you'll notice on this specific footage, well, actually we'll notice a few things. First, I need to tag the input color space to be correct. But one of the first things that we'll notice is that it doesn't have any smoke in there. It's just this muzzle flash, and they've got several different muzzle flashes in here. I'm going to Google, one second, Colt 45. Okay, good. Alright. I don't know, guys. I'm not a gun guy, so I just wanted to double check to make sure that I was selecting the right gun. It's like, this is quite a bit of gun for a gun. I'm going to add in a frame range here till about 19. And so now this specific asset that we're doing only will play for those amount of frames. The other thing that we're going to want to do is we already know that our first frame needs to line up on frame, I think it's 17, 10, 17, yes. So I can add in, after this frame range, I can say time offset. And I can line it up with 1016, I think, in order to get this to work. Yes, because I was adding +1 to it. Yeah, pistol isn't going to have a huge muzzle flash. No, it's not. But it's film, so you can exaggerate. Totally. And as we will exaggerate. I believe, isn't muzzle flashes only supposed to be like one frame? That was kind of the thing that threw me off here. I was like, wow, this is quite a bit of flash for like a gun. Again, I don't know much, but I've seen some movies, man. I've seen some movies. So, okay, so now that our muzzle flash is like that, all we have to do is really just drop that into our scene. We're going to want this to move according to the camera, or according to the gun, whereas the smoke is going to be moving according to the scene. Because the muzzle flash is primarily coming out of the gun, we only need it to be on that specific area. So, with that being said, I'm going to add in a tracker. And we're going to track, we're going to track the original footage here. But we're going to track specifically this gun point. So if I add in a new tracker, and we'll just go ahead and go view that real quick. Add in a new tracker. I thought I clicked the button, but I guess I didn't. Going to keep our tracker pretty small, but the area of distance of where that point could be is going to be much larger, because he does yank this gun back quite quickly. Also going to want to do this on the... Oh, whoops. No, I am going to want to do it on this frame, because this is the frame in which the muzzle flash happens. In which case, also set the reference frame to this frame, so that way we don't have any problems going forward. And then now, if we go ahead and track forward at the top here, it's going to track the gun, which looks like it already failed. I think, yeah, you're already executing something, but you're doing it incorrectly. So I'm trying to save you, Nuke. I'm trying to save you from yourself. Well, looks like we are waiting for Nuke to catch up. But it's only a few frames, so I'm not too concerned about this. If we go to our tracker node here, um, let's see, it gets that frame correct, and then from here on out, it just kind of goes off. I'm going to delete the next few frames, and we're just going to manually track this, which you could do just by grabbing your tracker. It's just a lot of motion blur, and it's detecting the same kind of area in which it's trying to track from areas in the background. So this is where having a nice hand track can come in good. So we're going to do a match move here, and we'll just output that over here to our muzzle flash that we want to have. I'm going to drop that in a second, but if we take this now and we merge this back on top of our footage, we could just see where this muzzle flash is going. So I'm just going to grab this and move this guy over. Might even be worth it to, let's see, let's disable that. I'm going to find the point in where we can put this pin right here. And then now I'm just going to change the center of this to live in that area. So that'll be 1920 by 582, I think. There we go. And the only reason why that looked weird was because it was already transformed to this position over here. But essentially, what you want to do is you want to look at the original footage right here and then figure out what that point is. And you can see that number on the bottom of your screen here. If I left control click, it'll actually put a pin there, so that way I don't have to keep going back over to it. But now that we have that, let's go ahead and add this into our shot. This is a very big muzzle flash so far. We're not going to want it to be this large. I think, to my understanding with guns, and again, I don't know too much about guns, but I believe muzzle flashes theoretically should be about the size of the actual gun themselves. That's kind of just the way I've always done them. Is the actual muzzle flash, if you were to line it up to the size of your gun, it should roughly line up to that size, and then that usually looks pretty accurate to what you're trying to go for. I think a lot of people tend to make their guns a little too large, or their muzzle flashes a little too large, and that can look very fake because of that. But I find that if you roughly line it up, again, you got a lot of wiggle room here, but if you roughly line that up, you can get your muzzle flash to be the correct size. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that, and then we're just going to line that up with the barrel here of our gun. And let's go ahead and add back in the complete opacity. Now, obviously, this looks terrible. So we're going to have to make some further adjustments to this as well. But a few things I want to select here on this video footage is that before the frame 1 happens, we want it to be black, and then before the last frame, we want it to be black as well. And I think that'll make it so that way it's not holding that frame. Whereas if we went to frame 1016 and this said hold, I believe that it just freeze frames your first frame. So by setting that to black, it's automatically going to kind of just get rid of it. And then one thing I didn't really check on this was it looks like there is an alpha on these muzzle flashes already. If there are not, then the actual merge node that you're using here, we would just set this to plus instead of setting it to over. Which we can still set it to plus if we want right now. Shouldn't make a difference because, you know, it doesn't make a difference. But if we do set it to plus, you'll notice that the color operators are a little more accurate to your shot, but aren't using the alpha of your scene. Blender is good for now, and some years expand my Oh, you asked a question. I'm sorry, I missed your first question. If I just did my first donut in Blender, oh, congratulations, the Andrew tutorial, Blender Guru. I'm going to render this in a week. I think I need to know Nuke at some point if I need to dive into Blender world. Well, okay. Nuke is more of a compositing software. Blender is more of a CG software. So while I would say that it would be good for you to learn how to be a compositor to be a CG artist. You don't have to. If you're working at larger studios, you would never be touching compositing if you were doing CG. But the nice thing about understanding how compositing works is that you have the capability of understanding what will need to go into the shot in the end of the day. So I think it's a helpful thing to like learn and understand, but you may not need to be as advanced at it as other people would be. Okay, I'm thinking now here that looks pretty sweet. Um, and now we'll notice that the muzzle flash kind of just sits there in that area of the screen and does not move with everything. So we're going to now take this match move that we have and drop that in. We should not see a change happen on this frame 1017, and that's because on 1017 it is set to be in the same area. So you could change that on the transform the reference frame here. But now if we go view this, this should look better. So let's see, that moves with our gun. And it's cool that it's moving with it because now we don't have to worry about like adding in these kind of like spark effects that we would probably throw into a really nice impactful gun anyways. Because I feel like there's several elements to a good muzzle flash is to have the initial kind of muzzle flash, which will be generally about one frame or so. And then after that frame happens, you'll have smoke. And the smoke's going to push out into your scene. That's what we're going to be using the world camera track for, because that's going to be floating above the ground here. But then on top of that, you're going to want sparks to continue to come out of the gun to give it like that extra little oomph of feeling to your muzzle flash. And I think right there, this right here, after this frame is the muzzle flash, this is when the sparks are going to start, and also when that flames are going to turn into kind of like this smoke vapor that'll be pushed out into your scene. And we could do that with our camera track. So I'm going to disable, or not disable, but we're going to just move this muzzle flash over for right now. And with our camera track, after we have all of our solve over here, let's go ahead and output a scene plus. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to undistort our shot. Ever so slightly because there wasn't that much distortion on the shot to begin with, but you'll notice that primarily on the edges here that it's unwrapping those out and making like a flat environment for us to use for our track. And now you'll notice all these gray points. I had somebody ask the other day how to get rid of these gray points, and I'll just show you real quick. It's pretty easy. Just go to this camera tracker point cloud here and then make sure that this is set to off, and then booyah. No more gray points in your scene. But those gray tracking points are very helpful because that allows us to know that we did get some good tracks onto our scene. What we're going to want to do is find roughly where this area is in like kind of like depth wise from the camera, and kind of roughly in the same like X and Y orientation. But we're going to go up in the air. So I'm thinking right here is like where we're going to want our smoke vapor to be. If this is like a good track, I'm going to say let's create a card, and that's going to add a card into like a 3D world space here that we can move around and orient in however direction we want. But the idea for us is that we could put whatever texture we want on this as well. And that's going to just generate this card over here. I'm going to throw that card onto our scene, and now if we go view our scene, by just pressing tab, you can jump back and forth between 3D and 2D. I can see our card. I'm going to throw a texture onto it real quick. So if we just throw a checkerboard onto our card, we can see what we're doing here. If we double click our card, we can change the total scale of this. So I'm going to make this quite a bit smaller. And it looks like I made this too high in the air. So we'll just move that down and roughly position this on the y-axis accordingly to the gun. The other thing I want to do real quick, and I should have done this in the very beginning, but if we go to our project settings, I believe 24 frames per second is correct here, but we want to change our file format size to something like 1920 by 1080 because that is what our input source is for our shot. And we can see what that resolution is down here on the bottom left hand corner. That does a few things for us. All the auto settings of like what the root format is, it automatically sets that correctly, as well as when I go to our scanline renderer here, the first thing I'm going to want to do is select the BG here, so that way our card is over alpha. This will help us later for compositing purposes. And then on top of that, we'll just add a merge node in now. Whoops. We'll add a merge node in now. And if we plug this merge B input into the lens distortion node that we have there, now it's going to do the same thing as if we just had this selected on BG, but now we're going to have the alpha of all of our cards. This is super useful for being able to create masks of like specific sections and like cleaning up your comps a little bit. So let's go ahead and see if this sticks to our scene with our camera track. It should feel like it's really grounded into the shot, and it does, you know, because we got a good camera track. But now that's floating in that space right where we want that smoke to exist, specifically starting on that frame 1017 or 1018, which is where we're going to want the smoke to start. But if we go to frame 1018 here, we can now drop in some kind of card into our shot. Now the reason why I'm using classical camera tracker rather than doing this inside of the new camera tracker is because they have the ability inside of this camera tracker node to do project 3D. Now you could do project 3D on the other one, but I haven't gotten it to look as good. It's always super wacky with how the lighting, because like you have to add lighting in, it's like a whole shader setup. I haven't delved into it yet to really learn how to do any of that stuff. So eventually I will, and then I won't have any problems. But for right now, I do have problems with it, so I'm using the old classical camera tracker inside of Nuke. Okay, now with our shot here, we're going to want to add in some smoke. So let's go look at some of these assets again. So these are all just muzzle flashes here. But if we went back to that link in the description, you'll notice that there's also a gun smoke area. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this gun smoke and see what we can grab from here. Again, we're going to try to find a similar camera angle to what we need. This looks like it's angled, which is pretty cool. I like that one. I really like this one. Let's see what this looks like. That's a side profile. I think this will work. So we're going to grab Gunsmoke side of 5. And then I'm going to go ahead and download that. I should have it already. Yes. So grab that. Drop it into our VFX materials folder. Now we can just drag that over into our scene. Oops. And now we could go ahead and change the input transform to the correct color space. We're going to want that on our card. But instead of just dragging this directly onto our card like so, we're going to project it onto the card. So firstly, let's go ahead and make the scale of this card super big so it encompasses the entire shot here. And that way we're not clipping any edges. And then secondly, I'm going to merge this onto the original footage here. We just kind of need to line everything up. So I'm going to also grab the time offset here to make sure that the time offset starts at frame 1017. And again, I think we really want it to start at 1018 is where we want to see the first bit of smoke. So something like that. Okay. And now if we go ahead and add a transform on, if we go drop this into our shot here. Oh, and again, we're going to need to select our transform, find the area in which the smoke is starting. This just makes it a lot easier to do this. 1179 and 487. Or did I type some number incorrectly? Oh, I am dyslexic, obviously. And now let's go ahead and we'll have our transform here, and now we can move this to wherever we want in our shot. This is the beginning of our smoke field, so let's go ahead and just drop that in like so. I'm going to kind of get the angle, because the angle does matter in which it's coming out, because it's got to feel like force from where it's doing that. So yeah, if we look at that, we're going to see it kind of just floating there. The other thing to note is that it's kind of important that, just like the muzzle flash, the size of your smoke is important, because by the frame 1018 here, should be a little bit larger. It should be like twice the size of the actual muzzle flash that we have. So what we're going to want is probably to use something like an O-flow. And let's change the speed here to like a 1.7. Let's see what that looks like. And for this frame here, we're going to want our offset, which is adjust our offset again real quick. Probably there. And so now if we go ahead and line up our transform to that, I'm going to angle this a little bit better to like how the gun is positioned here. And that'll be good. Okay, for our camera, we're going to make sure we're doing this on frame 1017, since this is where we are lining everything up with our transform and our merge node. We're going to delete our merge node. Okay, guys, follow along here. Camera tracker, copy, paste it, and don't change your frame. We're going to say no animation on this camera tracker. It's going to basically lock in the transform and rotation of our camera. And then we go ahead and add in a project 3D, again using a classic. We're going to make sure that's going into our card here, and camera is selected on camera. So now if we go ahead and move this over to our gun smoke, it's essentially going to be projecting this gun smoke on this frame as if it were this this angle right here. So that way, if the camera's moving in like any other angle, we're going to see some warping happening. Luckily for us, it's not. The camera's not rotating or anything like that, but it's going to be projecting this gun smoke as if it was like merging it onto the frame, onto the card, only on this frame. And then since this is not animated, it's going to, now the card's going to move with the scene, and since it's moving with the scene, it's going to move with our shot. And that's perfectly how we want it. So now if we go ahead and go view our gun smoke add-on here, let's see. Actually, I think I messed. Oh, that's right. Another thing to keep in mind, make sure that when you're viewing it, you're viewing the undistorted version of your shot and not the distorted version, because otherwise you're going to have what just happened to me, which is it's like slightly off. So I'm going to make some further adjustments here, just to kind of get this to line up perfectly. The other thing we're going to notice is that we're going to get a little bit of clipping here. And the reason why that's clipping is because under our Project 3D, it says crop. So we're going to unselect that crop, and then that way we're making sure that it's not going to crop on our shot. That wouldn't have been where that camera angle would have been. Still feeling like it's not the right angle, so let's make some more adjustments here. That's feeling about right. Obviously it doesn't sit in our scene yet, but now it's certainly moving with our shot, and it's feeling like it's at least grounded with the camera track. There's a few things that we can do to like really make this feel right. you'll notice that the opacity kind of just feels meh, you know? Like it doesn't feel like it's really part of the environment. And this is where a bit of compositing trickery can come in to really make things feel a little bit more natural and part of the world in which they're sitting. So, first things first, we've got like a window back here, and you can even see some harsh light coming from this angle of the camera. So we're going to want to try to emulate that on our smoke, because right now our smoke is super flat. So we're going to create some depth, some volume, some realism to our shot here. And that's going to be by adding in some grade nodes and stuff like that. So let's go ahead, and after this time offset is happening here, we're going to want to do some further adjustments. We're probably going to want to first create a merge node, and could probably also add in a grade node before any of this stuff. We're going to change our white point here to kind of just have a little bit more of a brown musty feel to fit into the environment. I'm going to probably do something like that. And that's a really slight kind of effect that we're doing there to really make it feel like it's part of the environment. It's just to add a grade node in and kind of set the value to the environment in which it's sitting in. You're trying to match the lighting as much as possible. So just giving it kind of like that warm, musty feel is kind of setting it into that world that we want it to, you know, live in. And that's going to be our grade node there. Switch the node. Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. And now, the other thing we're going to want to do is kind of add in kind of the shading in which the light is hitting the smoke in like specific angles. So first things first, let's go ahead and we're going to use a merge node here. I'm also going to use a roto node, and we're going to drag that roto node into our grade here. We're just going to create a separate area in which we're doing all of this stuff. I'm going to give myself a lot more room to work with. In fact, actually, we're going to take this whole setup and move that down there. But taking this roto node here, I'm going to go ahead and view this. And let's look at the smoke here. I'm going to want the top portion of this smoke to feel more lit than the bottom portion of the smoke, which will have more shadow to it. So that way it just feels like it's more set into the environment. Depending on where your lighting is coming from inside of your scene is where you're going to want this lighting to happen. But that's just where the artistic part of your filmmaking knowledge is going to come in. So we're going to use the roto node just here at the top. And obviously if we played back the whole shot, it's going to need to be adjusted with everything. But it primarily is just going to be just like that top portion of your shot. And now, if we go view this, I'm going to use the mask as our output here, and then I'm going to blur after that a decent amount, just so that way it kind of like fades between the top and the bottom. This section here, we can use a grade node and kind of like just darken it ever so slightly. What we're trying to do is just create, or sorry, actually this is the top of it. So we're going to want to lighten it. We're just going to lighten the top of our smoke. And now if we add another merge node in on top here, you'll notice that we're kind of lighting the top of the smoke before it gets sent to our card down there. So now if we go view our merge stack here, we could see already that it's adding in like this extra kind of like glow that it would be getting just similar to how the head or your actor or your scene, like you just want to match that as much as possible. And that already kind of just allows it to feel like it's more 3D and it's in the environment rather than feeling like a 2D piece of footage just sitting on the top of it. But just like that, we could actually go ahead and just grab the bottom fringes and even make that a little bit darker. So let's go ahead and do that as well. I'm going to add another roto node in. And I'm just going to kind of move this over. And let's go ahead and add another merge node. And the mask is going to be grabbed from that roto. And we're just going to grab this bottom section down here. Do our GPA again. And of course, blur after our roto node. And we're just going to want this very bottom edge of the muzzle flash, because this is going to be the shadow of our muzzle flash. And of course, we could add another grade node in, and we'll be merging this back on top of our composite. But now we can see kind of what we're doing here. We're going to darken up this edge down there, and you can kind of see what's going on. Actually, funny enough, we're going to probably want to give it a little bit more brown texture to it as well. And you can kind of see that musty environment coming through. So now let's go back to our main composite here. Not as much of a fan on that. No, I think that definitely helps though. What I am thinking though is we're going to want more contrast to the top here just to feel a little bit brighter, so we're going to want to adjust that for sure. I think that looks much better. And now, if we go into our scene here, the other thing is I was keyframing this to move with it. So let's go ahead and adjust some of these keyframes. I don't want as much of the top, so I'm just trying to. And you can kind of see that right there coming through. We're just creating this kind of lighting. It feels a little harsh. We might want to blur that a little bit more. Yes. If we blur that a little bit more, and then let's go ahead and just drag that a little ever so slightly further up. Okay. And one thing we could also do is by selecting this blur node here, we can actually keyframe like different parts of it. So, like for instance, this amount of blur here is good, but maybe on this frame here we want it to have less blur. That way it's not as encompassing of our entire shot. So now if we play that back, looks pretty nice. Let's go back to our merge node down here. Let's play this back and see what we got. Already pretty good. And now, the other thing that we can do to really allow this to kind of like sit into our environment a little bit better is we're going to composite the overall grade of this. Now we are using 3D for this shot, so one thing that we can easily just do is just adjust the amount of mix between the merge here and the background, and that way it's not feeling so opaque. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I am thinking that we're probably going to want to adjust, let's see, this transform ever so slightly. Is still feeling a little off to me. Okay, now let's go ahead and view this with our muzzle flash that we did earlier. And that's right here. So all we have to do is just add this all the way down there. And it's okay that the smoke is behind it, because again, muzzle flash will be in front, then sparks, and then the smoke. So let's go ahead and see what we've got now. So we're going to go ahead and view this. I'm not as much of a fan of how much this is lingering afterwards. So, we're going to do a few things here. We're going to break up the overall kind of effect that we're receiving on this muzzle flash, because I feel like it's just lingering for so long. So I think one thing we could for sure do here, though, is let's keep the match move down there. I'm going to do all of this beforehand. I'm going to use an OFlow plugin. And actually, I thought OFlow allowed me to... here it is. Frame number. So this will be 1017. I'm going to set a keyframe there. And then I'm going to set a keyframe here for 1000. And that's actually going to just animate this to move out of regular frame rate. But now I'm going to want this here to be like 10... Let's see. It's looking good to me. Let's see what that looks like here. Essentially, we are creating our own frames for how fast we want this muzzle flash to happen. That's feeling a lot better. It doesn't linger as long. So you're not locked in with whatever you are dropping into your shot, by the way. So, you know, whatever assets you have, you can always customize it. We could have also only taken the first frame and then maybe sparks from a completely different gun and drop those in as well if we wanted to. But I'm thinking this looks pretty sweet. But you'll notice something is like the muzzle flash right now looks pretty good, but it's not lighting up our scene. And technically speaking, fire should light up a scene, right? So it's need to light up some different elements of our shot here and make it feel really kind of like ingrained into what's going on. Because right now it is totally not feeling like this is affecting our shot whatsoever. I mean, yeah, we got a muzzle flash, fantastic, but it doesn't feel real yet. It just feels like a composited VFX shot. So let's go to our frame 1017, which is where we're going to want to have the majority of our effect kind of happening here. Now, we're going to take this guy, okay? And there's a few things that we can do here. Firstly, we can add in some grade nodes and then kind of just do some, you know, roto work where we add in some stuff onto the ground here. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to kind of want to add a tiny glow, not a huge glow, just a tiny glow to the ground. Very blurred out glow for sure. So let's go ahead and grab our roto node here, and we're just going to ever so slightly roto this whole area in which we would see some kind of like specularity on the ground. And this is going to be very like kind of like more artistic on how much glow you're going to want. We might change the scale on this later. But let's see, what does that give us? It gives us something like that. Thinking this might be a little too much blur, so let's try that and just see how bad that looks. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just probably, we can set the white point to the ground here. And then, let's disable the grade node real quick. And then we're going to set the gain to the color of our muzzle flash. So probably something like that. And so now if we enable that, what it's doing is it's taking the white values of our ground here, and it's saying, hey, make that this color here. So rather than doing like an ugly kind of like opacity over your ground, you can actually relight objects by just grabbing the white point. And if we really need to get complicated with it, we could have done the black point as well, but we're just adding a bit of a glow. Not too much, just a tiny glow. And obviously this is pretty large, with the amount of glow that we're adding into our shot here. But I can adjust all of that through our mix node here on the amount that we want to have inside of our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and set a keyframe here, for instance, and then if we go back to 1016, remove that keyframe, and that's going to be pretty nicely set into our shot. Let's see, I might add just a little less of a glow, and then it's down to nothing pretty much here. Just kind of following that muzzle flash to 0. And now let's go ahead and play that back and see what what we have for our shot. And that's pretty subtle. Nothing big. It's just a little bit of a flash for sure. I might even want this frame to be a little bit more at the apex of the muzzle flash. That's definitely feeling a lot better now. So we've got the muzzle flash here on the ground. I would say let's go ahead and do that onto some other parts of our environment as well. So let's go ahead and add another grade node in. I'm going to do this with separate grade nodes because that way it'll allow us to have an easier control over the texture color that we are going for and not just an overall wash of some kind of gold effect. But to each his own. Probably just going to continue this down, I suppose. Oh, we're probably not going to want as much of this to be shown, so we'll just go back something like that. And then with our blur here, let's go and blur that quite a bit. We can even blur this not quite as much as 300, but like 200 should be fine. And now, if I take our grade node here, we're just going to disable it again, but we're going to select our white point of something on our bricks somewhere. And then use our gain as something on the yellow here. And that's going to kind of just like glow our background. And then again, just using a mix node to kind of a little bit more of a fall off. Something like that should be fine. And we can go ahead and keyframe this as well. So go back to our frame before here and then just make sure that's completely turned off. And we don't need a camera track on this glow because it is only for like one frame. So you can kind of get away with a little bit more there. I'm going to say I'm not a huge fan of... I want to see more of his outline. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm thinking let's add another merge node in after our blur. And I'm going to... kind of create like more of a roto edge of him. The reason why is because technically speaking the muzzle flash is on the other side of him, so I want to see his shadow on the wall when the muzzle flash happens. So we could do this pretty, I think that's even as much as we need. Just got to be decently close to his shape. And we'll go ahead and set this to pre-multiply that. And I'm going to invert our selection of our roto now. And if I move this guy over, we'll notice that we're starting to get a bit of a shadow on the wall as to like where his body would be in relation to that kind of flare. And now all we need to do is just add another blur node in, and we could just blur that roto node a little bit, just a tiny bit, to give it some shape. And there we go. Let's see how that looks in playback. I'm thinking we'll blur it a little bit more. Yeah, it's pretty good. And then for our grade node here, I just want to probably lessen the overall amount of muzzle flash that we're getting. And then to here, I'll have that turn off by that point. So that way it's only by 1 frame. It's pretty subtle, and I like it. Okay, now, next thing we're going to want to do here, though, is add a little bit of a flash on our actor as well. So we're going to do one more grade node. And let's see. The other thing is I'm going to move all of this over to the right side just to keep things a little more organized. Have that come out of there. Just clean up my comp a little bit here. It's getting a little chaotic. And I'm going to have another roto, and I'm just going to keep that going down the pipeline here. And we're going to do, for this, I'll do a general kind of like roto. So we're going to do, because I am running out of time here, so we're just going to as much as possible follow the height of our dude. I'm just kind of creating some shapes that the light will get caught onto. This will make it feel a little bit more 3D into our sequence. I'm just kind of following, it's like contouring essentially is what we're doing here. Creating some shapes that'll allow it to feel like more like a 3D kind of object. And not 2D, which is what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to pre-multiply that, and then let's go ahead and blur everything a little bit, not too much. And now, again, we're just going to go into our white point here, and we're just going to manually add in some glow here. And as you can see, it definitely doesn't look as good to what we were doing before, but we're just running out of times. I would recommend doing what we had done before as your, like, always do it that way. It looks better. Otherwise you get like kind of this, it just feels fake. But for right now, I have to get this so we can add in some bullet hits. Otherwise we're not going to be able to add in some bullet hits today. Bam. Feels more like a wash over there. Thinking we need to blur it a little bit more, maybe. Yeah. It just felt a little too circular on the wall in the back. It's feeling a lot better. Okay, one more thing before we get to doing the any kind of bullet hits. Probably gonna want to add in a shell into the shot. So let's go back here. Find let's see, bullet hits, ejecting bullet shells on Action VFX's website. Again, link in description. Now they got a lot of these for like big ol' guns with like lots of bullets flying out, but we only need one. And again, I did some quick research before we started this live stream, and I found out that guns, for the most part, eject shells to the right side of the gun. So we'll need something that's flying away from camera here. Let's say fly away from camera. Yeah, this should be fine. So let's go ahead and download this. Away from camera. Ooh, zip file. What's the difference? That looks pretty cool. Away wide. Oh, that was close. This is wide. Are we technically wide? Yeah, I guess we're wide. We'll use wide. I'm glad they give us both options there. That's pretty cool. So we're going to be able to add in this muzzle flash here. Or this pistol shot here. I'm going to say let's go ahead and do this more so where the smoke is located, because we're going to be projecting this onto its own card. So we can do that by selecting something back here and adding in a card, just like we did before. We could use a checkerboard so that way we can see what we're doing. And we'll just plug that into our scene. And that should play pretty nicely. The only thing we have to be concerned about is, since we are using we're controlling the alpha of the smoke on our merge layer here by setting that to 0.5. We're going to want that merge to be a little bit higher. What is the name of the view software you use to see the MOV files? Oh, I use Switch. I don't have the paid version of Switch, so hence the watermark in the top right corner. Thinking that if we add a merge node into the very top of our sequence there, and then we set this to a 1. Let's go ahead and disable this for right now. Yeah, that's basically the same thing, so that way we don't have to half our merge here. We can do that higher up on the sequence. But now we have this other card that we're going to be projecting onto, and we can use a merge node, plug that into our lens distortion like we did before, a transform node, and let's go ahead and see where we need to put this shell. First things first, we'll need to offset our bullet flying effect. And now, if we just play it back, let's see. Looks like I'm not seeing where it's at. Oh, there it is. Probably going to want to O-flow this too, right? Just change the overall speed of it to 2x. It's called switch, I think, right? Oh, whoops, not which, switch. Switch. S-W-I-T-C-H. I use it at work, and so I got used to using it at works, and then now I'm like, oh, now I got to use it at home. It's like one of those things, right? Okay, that's roughly the speed that I like it at. It's hard to see, guys, but it is there. I assure you, it is there. Okay, now let's go ahead and delete this merge node. Am I going to put this script on Patreon? I can. Okay, this is a good question for you guys. You know, since you are asking, I am 100% fine with putting this on Patreon. I have Nuke Indie though for this, so I do these streams and the midweek streams at my house, and at my house I have Nuke Indie. At work I have Nuke X. So Nuke Indie has node lock, so that way if you have Nuke X, you can't really open up those files, I don't think. And that might be problematic for people if they are using Nuke X. If you guys are fine with me uploading the Nuke Indie files, and if people have Nuke Indie, then that's great. That's not a problem. I'm not interested in buying a whole Nuke license just to have here at the house. So, you know, it just doesn't make sense for me to do that. It's nice just to learn and see what we can do. Yeah, and I 100% agree. And that was the whole idea behind the Patreon, was to have the project files for everything kind of be up there. And I do upload the Nuke files for the weekend streams that I do. But I would love to upload these as well. I just don't know if people will be annoyed that they're Nuke Indie files rather than Nuke X. Oh, you're using Nuke Indie. Okay, well then it's great. Then yes, we will upload these project files. These project files will be uploaded after the live stream's finished. So that's the way I usually upload project files, is I upload them directly after the live stream, and they go up there. The only problem is sometimes Blender files are a little too large. Patreon has a 200 megabyte limit, and yeah, that gets a little tricky sometimes. But Nuke files, they're like so tiny, it doesn't make a difference. So to answer your question, yes, they will be up on the Patreon. Under the Render Raiders tier is the people that get the project files. Okay, great. So this is looking pretty good. I just removed the merge node. I'm going to now project that onto our shot. Again, we're going to do the same thing we did before. Oops. We're going to do the same thing before. We could actually just copy paste this stuff because it's using the same 1017 frame number that we were using. And I would just plug that into our transform here and plug this directly into our card. Oh, whoops. We could delete this card and use this card here. The only thing also I might want to do is throw a merge node after this transform. I think that should be fine. I'm actually going to reformat this at the very top of our comp to 1920 by 1080. And I just want to double check this again against our lens distortion that we're doing. That looks pretty good. So 1017, let's go ahead and delete our merge node and use this as a project 3D. And now if we go view, this should at least camera track with our shot, and then we can comp it into our scene a little bit better. But now it's going to be moving with the camera movement. That's so nice that you can have the big scripts and just send it on emails with like AE, you need to have some gigabytes and transfer that to the file transfer. That is true. I had never luckily had to send too many After Effects files to people, but when I did, it was so frustrating. Because of how much work it was to send project files to people. Also, just like asset linking was terrible. But these Nuke files, well, I can even just show you. A fair point, though, I am not redistributing after action VFX assets. Just as an FYI, and I write that in all of my posts on Patreon. We don't redistribute any media assets that I don't own. Everything that I do generate myself, I do redistribute those. But the cool thing about you getting these script files is if you go purchase the Action VFX stuff, you can just link them directly inside of here. But yeah, you can see this is 5 kilobytes in size. That's crazy. It's like nothing. The Blender files are even pretty small compared to like Maya and Cinema 4D files. Those things are massive. Okay, I am thinking though the scale of this Muzzle Flash is small. Am I wrong in thinking that? I don't know, because I don't know much about guns, but I do know this. That looks a little small to me. Let's do that size. And so the way it's going to eject is like that. You've used so much money on it. Hey, Action VFX is a good place to use your money, though. They are a bunch of great guys. And they're releasing like new assets. What is it, like once a week or once a month or something crazy like that? I'm going to roto out the bullet right there. We'll use pre-multiply RGBA. And I'm just going to line that up. Now we're just going to invert that mask. Let's see. Yeah, that should work just fine. The other thing that you'll notice here is that this bullet is pretty crisp. It doesn't have very much motion blur whatsoever to it. So we're going to add in some motion blur ourselves. But before we do that, let's go ahead and just get it to sit a little bit better in our scene. It just doesn't feel like it's part of the environment quite yet. So after all of that, I'm going to go ahead and add in a grade node here. And actually, before the grade node, we're even going to add in a saturation node. So just add in a saturation node. Just going to remove some of the saturation a little bit. And then with our grade node here, we're going to change the white point. It's pretty slight. Let's see how well that plays. Yeah, and that feels like it sits in the environment a lot better rather than it feeling like it was just like this gold thing that couldn't possibly exist inside of that world. I have shoot many guns, and in nighttime, the scale is just like this on the pistol. So yeah, it's fine. Fantastic. That's perfect. Because again, I don't do too much gun stuff, so. I've shot like a gun like twice or 3 times in my life, which honestly is more than I think quite a bit of people. So I you know what, blessed. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is after this grade node happens, I'm going to add in some motion blur. So here's a little trick. We're going to use pixel motion blur. If we add in a motion blur, it's going to use pixel estimation. The thing you got to be worried about is these doubling that's kind of happening here. We don't want that, so I'm just going to zoom in on that and just focus on it. We can add in like more samples, and that will kind of connect the dots a little bit better. This will take longer to render because of that, but at least then we're going to have, you know, some good solid motion blur there. And yeah, I think that's... Ooh, whoops, we're not changing the shutter speed here. Let's go ahead and play back the whole shot here. You see it better when it's dark, so that's why I use that as a reference. Yeah, I've never shot a gun in the dark, though. You know, I tried, so I've shot a 45 once, and then I shot some other pistol. I don't know what it was. But, oh, I did not like that motion blur. We're going to adjust that in a second. And then I shot a shotgun. And the shotgun was with clay pigeons. And that was interesting. I missed every clay pigeon they threw. I don't know how people hit those things. I have no clue. That just seems like an impossibility to me. Oh, whoops. Let's trying to lessen the amount of the motion blur here. I think 0.2 maybe. Let's see what that looks like. We're just playing with this, guys, until we get it to... Yeah, and even that already looks a little bit better to what I'd like. Maybe you can add some camera shake. I will be. Yeah, I'll be adding some camera shake. Just a tiny bit. I will say this, though. This is something to keep in mind. I'm going to do it on this shot because I'm the one in charge. But do keep in mind that when working on other shots for like actual films and whatnot, you can't always just add in motion blur. Or not motion blur, sorry, but any kind of like camera shaking or changing adjustments. I mean, we're going to do it, but, you know, when working on real movies, they don't let you do that kind of stuff. The other thing I want to do, and I should have done this first before I did anything else, but I didn't, so here we are. I'm going to add in a dot. And I'm going to add in a denoiser. Really should have done this before everything else, but I was getting so excited about this shot, man. And we're going to just find kind of like a gray area of our scene, which honestly, the whole ground works. And what it's going to do is it's going to kind of denoise the whole shot as a whole. And I'm going to add in another grain node here. And we'll plug that into our denoiser. And now if we split using like W on our keyboard, we're going to see the difference between the original shot and our newly added grain that we have here. And I'm going to just add ever so slight amount of reds. Change the size a little bit to match our scene. Our green. And then our blue. A little too much green noise. And that's not insane amount of grain, but we're going to add that into the end of our shot, the very end of our sequence. The other thing we're going to have to add back into the end of our sequence is a lens distortion. So go back to our original camera tracker that we have here, and we're going to output a distortion node. And it's going to redistort our footage at the very end. I'm going to do that before the grain. And let's go ahead and add in a little bit of camera shake, like you said. You said, because here I feel like the gun is just pushing the muzzle flash out with no impact. It's true. You know what we could do instead of doing a bit of a camera shake? This might work. I don't know. This is a test. We're going to see how bad this looks, and then if it looks terrible, you know, we won't do it. Um, I'm gonna add in because that's a fair creative note, is that the gun doesn't have as much of an impact as it should in our entire sequence, or in our entire shot. I'm gonna add in a grid warp, and we're just gonna split up primarily this section here. So let's just do that. Um, I am concerned about the background here. Yeah, let's do it this way. We're not going to do the bullet hits today, guys. We'll do bullet hits on a different video tutorial, okay? Because this is going to take a little bit of time, but it's all good. It's for the creative good here. I think what we're going to need to do is we're going to add a grid warp of his arm getting shot back for a few frames, but I'm concerned about the backdrop here getting warped, so we're going to need a clean roto of our guy with the gun in order to be able to do that. So I'm going to use DaVinci Resolve here. Although, actually, let's just see what this looks like, and if it looks terrible, then, you know, we can always get rid of it later, okay? So we're going to add in a keyframe without doing anything here, and then on frame 1018, we're just going to take this whole section of his gun, specifically as much localized as possible, just the part of his arm right here, with maybe this. So let's just grab both of these guys. I'm not going to do another compositing stream until, yeah, there we go. I'm not going to do another compositing stream until, what's it called? Next Tuesday. Just going to split this up as much as possible. The more localized we can get this gun, the better. That way, when we try to move him, we're not moving too much of anything else. I'm going to grab that and this. Pretty close. I want... yeah, that's fine. And then honestly, we could just copy paste our keyframe from before. So let's just see how this looks. Where's our keyframes in our dope sheet? It's not dope. It's fine, we can estimate it. Let's play that back and see what the grid warp looks like. Hopefully it's not too distracting that the rest of the environment is moving back, but maybe it'll feel impactful that the rest of the environment's going, whoa, it's quaking at the effect. You can't even notice that. Yeah, you can't even notice it. Let's get this to be correct, and I understand that the rest doesn't look good, but it's okay. We're going a bit much here. Oh, yes, and also exactly what Ben said. Sorry, I'm the bad YouTuber. I don't tell people to do these things. But also join our Discord. We have let me just copy the link here. Join our Discord, guys, if you guys aren't already. This is the link to it. And that way you'll get notified when new videos go up. I think, Matthias, you're already in the Discord, so you don't have to necessarily be worried about missing out on that. But anybody else that's here that's not in the Discord, make sure to join. It's free. And there's a lot of other great artists that are in the community as well. So if you got any questions about anything, then it's always good to post it in the Discord and other people can kind of help you out. I am thinking, like, here's the next comp stream. Maybe you can do a part 2 just with the bullets hits. That would be so nice. I could, yeah. I mean, there's other practice footage, so I'll probably do bullet hits on a different piece of footage. It's kind of what I'm thinking. Okay. But yes, no, you're totally right. And I definitely plan on doing a tutorial on it for sure. Because especially any kind of destruction stuff, we're probably going to do something along the lines of that. I'm going to, with that, I don't know if you just saw what I just did. I hit auto alpha there so that way it's not doubling our footage over top of each other. But I'm going to be merging the grid warp back on top here. This is just like a easy trick to quickly get a roto rather than us having to do a whole thing ourselves. What I'm trying to do is we can blend back our regular footage into our shot. Let's see. I don't know what I'm doing there. What does that do? RGBA. So now that's going to basically move the gun back, but then keep the rest of the environment the same. And obviously we're getting a bit of a hard line here. We could just blur this, and then that way we're not missing out as much. Let's see if that is as distracting. And you need to do some explosions. That is true. I gotta do some explosions. They've got some really cool nukes and stuff like that on Action VFX. Let's get this to cache and play back here. Yeah, as much as possible, I try to avoid moving the camera inside of the comp as much as possible, unless I was directed to do so by filmmakers, because in a general sense, the DP likes what they filmed. The director was on set with the DP when they filmed it, and the director liked what the DP filmed. And then the editor liked what the DP filmed and what the director had envisioned, and so the editor cut it into the film as such. And so then by the time it gets to the VFX artist, it's not really your job to play God of like, hey, I want to change anything I want here. You should try to keep as true to the original footage as much as possible, and that's from everything from camera movement to color grading. Don't do any color grading. It's not your job to be a colorist. You're a VFX artist. So you can light an environment, you can relight stuff, but I always try as much as possible to be respectful of the different departments and the different people and try to only do the things that I can affect. And that is relighting objects. And honestly, like, I mean, like a couple weeks ago, we did the magic effect or the Ghostbuster shot. That is going to be quite a bit of relighting where it does feel like color grading. But again, you're not a colorist. Your job is to light a shot and make it feel good in kind of like this, 1886 LUT kind of world of seeing it, right? That'll go to a DI facility, a digital intermediate facility, and they're going to recolor grade everything to match the rest of the sequence. So you don't want to go too heavy on like, oh, I want to add a vignette in here, and it's not your job to do that. All right, that's already feeling pretty good there. Um, with his arm kind of just like shaking a little bit more there. We just added a little bit of a kickback effect to it. I think I'm like one frame off on all this stuff anyways. Would it be the frame after or the frame before? Let's move this whole thing by one frame. And then maybe over the course of 2 frames, he kind of starts to kick back. It's pretty subtle, but I like that. Okay, that's pretty good. What do you guys think? Trying to see if there's anything else we could do in the next 20 minutes because I don't have much time here. Since we did a 3D camera track, we could do whatever we want into the scene, you know? Hell, let's do it. Let's try to add a bullet effect in on this shot. I wouldn't recommend it for you guys to do this in 15-20 minutes, but hey, let's try it. Dirt bullet hits? I mean, this isn't technically dirt. This is I don't like how these go straight in the air. Let's use this one. Ground hit 7. Oh, do I not have this? I swear I have ground hits. My downloads, please. Bullet hits. I guess I have a different pack. Oh, that's pretty cool anyways. Find some kind of... I think that's pretty cool. We'll have it hit the wall behind him. And let's see, let's move this all the way up here. I just realized something, Ben. I forgot to post on my Instagram that I was going live. That's funny. I don't actually know if anybody clicks on the links through my Instagram to join. Yeah, I mean, not in this shot. I'm not going to add an explosion in this shot. But there's this cool shot on Action VFX of this dude running away from an explosion. That might be fun to do. Reformat this first, and then time offset it. Sorry, we're not going back to the beginning of the stream. Hit the wrong button there, guys. You're right. 2005. Merge this over top of our undistorted footage here. And let's We're going to need to rotate this all the way around. And on our merge node here, let's set this to no, not an overlay, whoops. To a screen. Or a plus might be better. Yeah. Get the scaling correct here. And kind of just match that. Now the other thing I'm going to want to do here is add in a grade node. And, well, okay. Let's go to our time offset real quick. This doesn't have any alpha, so this could potentially pose some problems, especially if we plug this directly into our scanline render that we're currently using, because that's not multiplying everything back onto our scene. So what we're going to need to do is create our own alpha real quick. I'm going to just do that by grabbing a saturation node and desaturating everything, but then creating another merge node here and having the mask get plugged into that. And instead of looking at the alpha, it's going to be looking at like the red channel or something like that. And now if we go look at our regular dude here, you'll notice that he's got alpha. We can use a grade node after that saturation to kind of like show more or less. This is basically the same thing as what we do in Blender when we want to create a card that has alpha, and that's how we would do it. And so this will give us control over the amount of alpha that we want onto this specific thing. I will say we don't want to change the black point. We want to change the white point. And that's going to allow us to add more or less to our entirety of our shot. King, probably something like that should be fine. Yeah, it's good there. And obviously, this needs to be color graded. So with our grade node, let's go look at that real quick. Let's take the white point and set it to a nice lighter part of this brown here. And then let's go ahead and disable this and go to our shot now. And let's find our gain and find some good old brown, dark brown, something like that. And so now if we enable that, it's going to kind of blend a little bit better into our sequence. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to just increase the white point of the alpha as much as possible. And then now it feels very flat and like it definitely doesn't belong into our scene here. And that totally makes sense. So we're just going to take the grade here. And actually, I'm going to take this and I'm thinking we're going to want this actually at this point of the shot. Yeah. So it's happening before our mask option is happening, where it chops everything out. But the reason why I did that is because then we don't have to worry about alpha issues. But we could totally add in another grade node now. We're going to do this for the highlights. So we're going to add another grade node in with a roto. Plug that into here. And then we're just going to select the top bit of our kind of explosion effect here. Set this to RGBA. Add a blur node. That should be pretty good. And so now if we do this, we can actually increase the highlights of the top part of our smoke. Just the top. And then we're going to do the same things for the shadows. So again, another roto node, blur node, drop that in there. Our grade that we're doing here at the bottom, very bottom of it. Set that to RGBA. And then now with our blur, we're just going to do ever so slight blur. And with our grade node here, we can make this darker. And that's just going to allow it to sit in the scene a little bit better. And if you really want to get crazy with it, we could add some color variation into the smoke. For the shadow, it could feel a little more red because of the bricks. And so now, that, oh, whoops, is our smoke right there, and then we would be merging that back into our shot. I'm not actually going to have time. I'm looking at the clock right now. I'm running out of time. So we're just going to disable and delete this. We'll make a whole video just for adding in the gun explosion smoke, like hitting walls and stuff like that, hitting grounds and having things kind of like pop off and stuff like that. But for today, I think this is going to be our stream here. Let's cash out our shot and see what this looks like in playback. But how's it going, guys? How's your Monday? Oh, we just crashed Nuke. We just crashed the Nukes, guy. Let's open that back up. How's your guys' Monday? Mine's going off great here. Let's see. Open recent. Yes, restore autosave. Missing parentheses. Print. I don't know what that means. We're going to ignore it and pretend like we didn't see it. I'm just going to delete that. Hit the save button. Make sure we're viewing the last node here and set that to input and render that out. Let's see what this looks like. But yeah, how's your guys' Monday going? Or Tuesday. Today's Tuesday. Oh my gosh. How is your guys' Monday and how is your Tuesday going? And what are you guys' plans for the week? I hope to see some of you guys creating your own muzzle flashes and uploading those to Discord. We do have our own Discord, by the way. You could join in our Discord. We announce every time we go live. But then also, you guys go to our wonderful showcase section and upload your own works here so that way we can check it out. And if you want feedback on it, you can ask for feedback. There's a great community of people. Ask any questions. We got some work in progress stuff if you want to share some stuff that you guys are working on. And that's a great place to join. There's other artists that are doing 3D, CG, you know, whatever it is. Today we're doing a VFX composite, so something like this. This isn't bad. I'm not too angry with it. Let's try adding a little bit of a camera like effect to it. Normally I wouldn't try something like this, but why not? I'm gonna add a transform node in before we get that lens distortion. Change the scale here to 1.02. And let's set a keyframe here. So, bah. So it kind of like moves away from camera a little bit like that direction. Just adding a transform node in before our lens distortion here with just 2 keyframes and scaling it into 1.02. And yeah, sorry about that, Matthias. I was just doing it and then I swapped over for you there. But yeah, it's just a transform node, and then I also set the motion blur to 1. So that way we would get some motion blur on that movement. It's a little bit too much, honestly. Pretty subtle, but it's kind of cool. I like it. I think that's going to be the shot, guys. Thanks for watching, though. And we'll upload these project files to the Patreon. And so if you guys want to join, help support the channel and what all that, that fancy stuff that everybody always likes to say, then go ahead and join the Patreon. We do upload our project files after every live stream. So this particular project files for these Nuke indie files will be uploaded. We do not upload the media assets, so we don't upload action VFX assets, but you can grab all of those off of their website. They've got some good sales, I think, right now. I think they got like a 20% off sale or something. So now's a good time to get new assets. But on top of that, we do another live stream. So this is your first time here. We do weekly live streams over the weekend where we create a CG shot from scratch in Blender, and then we composite it in Nuke, and that's like a 4-hour stream, and we do those on Sundays. So if you are interested in seeing some stuff like that and just come in and hang out, then make sure to subscribe and come back for that stream. I'll see you guys Sunday for that. And this is another weekly stream we do on Tuesdays. If you guys have any suggestions of future live streams you'd like to see, make sure to leave that in the comments below, and or join the Discord and let me know there. I'll talk to you guys later, but thank you guys so much for joining, and I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time.